Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is going to be the first time in a while since we've actually done something math related. Now, it's been a while since I've done something math related. And the reason why is because I have now set up this new system. So, on Fridays and Sundays, on Friday at 8 p.m., you can be expecting a new video. And on Sunday at 5 p.m., you can also be expecting a new video. Now, what is this new system? On both of these days, I'm going to start a system where I'm going to teach one topic. And I'll do the introduction about the topic, and I'll give you a worksheet for the topic on Friday. And on Sunday, I'll give you the answer sheet and I'll explain it a little bit on the topic. Now, just because I do this doesn't mean that you have to finish the worksheet by Sunday. You can watch the Friday video, then finish the worksheet, and then watch the Sunday video. But that's our new system, which is going to be set up, so keep that in mind. But now let's get into our first topic. Our first topic of our channel is going to be the quadratic formula. Now, if you're not familiar with this, what the quadratic formula is, it's a formula. And I'm just going to say the formula to get this over with. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. You may not be familiar with some of these terms. For example, maybe the square root, maybe the plus or minus. Don't worry, everything will be explained. The format of it is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. So let's dive in.
We are one of heroes, we're the generation, so sick of labels. We don't want no heroes, we don't want no heroes.
Okay, now the first thing we want to do, let's take a look at identifying these three things, A, B, and C. Let's start with a simple example, 4x squared plus 3x plus 5. Here, it literally says it in the problem itself, x squared, xx, which means A is 4, B is 3, and C is 5. Everything is just already there for you. That is a super easy example of how to identify A, B, and C. Now, if you can guess, we're going to plug A, B, and C into our formula right up there. But let's not get into that part. Let's go dive deeper into identifying A, B, and C. Let's take another problem, 5x squared plus 3x. Now here, we know that A is 5 and B is 3, but where is C? C is still there. It's just plus 0. But since it's plus 0, they just don't write it. So C is actually 0, but obviously they're not going to be writing plus 0, so you have to figure that out yourself. Just like, for example, let's say that it's 5x squared plus 6. A is going to be 5, C is going to be 6, but what is B? B is 0x, but since 0x is just 0, they aren't going to say that, but B is 0. So A is always the number before x squared, B is the number before x, and C is the number by itself. If you can't see an A, if there's no x squared, that means A is 0. If there's no x, B is 0. If there's no just a regular number of some kind, then C is 0. Now let's play around with the negatives. It's going to basically work in the exact same way. Let's say that we have negative 4x minus 7. A is obviously going to be 0. B is going to be negative 4, since that's the term before the x, and C is going to be -7. Now you guys should be pretty familiar with how to find A, B, and C. So now let's take a look at the quadratic formula, which I showed you earlier in the video. Okay, so I'm gonna put that back up on the board. Okay, so, let's say that we have -5x squared plus 4x minus 7. Our A is going to be -5, our B is going to be 4, and our C is going to be -7. Oh god. What have I done? How do I get this out of here? I have no idea how to get this out of here. This is bad. Okay. And C is -7. Okay. So let's start with the basics. Let's negative B. So -4. Plus or minus, don't worry, we'll take care of the plus or minus. And the square root of B squared, which is 16, minus 4 times A, which is -5, times C, which is -7. So for this part, I'm going to grab out my calculator and I'm going to do a bit of math. So we're going to take this part minus 4AC. So I want you to put in your calculator -4 times -5 times -7. The answer which we get is -140. So now we have 16 minus 140 in our square root. So 16 minus 140, let me erase the board. -4 plus or minus. -4 plus or minus 16 minus 140. Now, as you know, 16 minus 140 is -124. -124. And in this video, we're going to dive into just something small, which is, since we have -124, what I want us to do is I'm going to introduce you to something called I. I is the square root of -1. I stands for an imaginary number. Now, the square root of -1 is I. So, for example, let's say we had, I don't know, square root of -4. Now, we know that the square root of 4 is 2. So, what is the square root of -4? It's 2i. It's that easy. If you find a negative square root, all you have to do is take that negative square root and square root it as usual, pretending like it's a positive, and then just add that I at the end. For example, if I typed in the square root of -4 on my calculator, I have a special thing on my calculator, and it'll show up as it'll show up as 2i. So, now that we've covered that I want us to take a look. There's something called simplifying fractions as well. So when we take that simplified fraction, how we simplify fractions is if we have 1, 2, 4, we can simplify that down by seeing, is 1, 2, 4 divisible by 4? Because 4 is a perfect square. It is divisible by 4. So if we divide it by 4, we get 31. So what we're going to do, the square root of 4 is 2. So we're going to take 2 outside, and it's going to be 31. But since 31 is going to be -31, we're going to have 2 square root of -31. Then, of course, we're going to have let me erase our board, -4 plus or minus 2 square root of -31, -4, -4, -4 plus or minus 2 square root of -31, and 2 divided by A. I forgot what A was. What was A? Here, wait. Let me figure out what A was. Apparently A was -5, so -5 times 2, since it's 2A, is -10. So now we've worked out our perfect understanding here. So let's solve it. Okay, so my board got erased, so I'm going to quickly rewrite where we were. -4 plus or minus 2 squared of -31 divided by -10. And this here, we can simplify this. -10 is divisible by 2. So what we can do is we can divide 4 by 2, and we can divide that by 2 as well. And then we divide -10 by 2 to get -5. And that is our fully simplified version. It does not look clean. And a lot of times when you're using the quadratic formula, you won't have to do much work because most of the time it won't even be clean. The thing itself won't even be clean. So, here, wait. So, in this video, there's not much more I can tell you. I've given you all the tools you need. I can give you a little sneak peek on the worksheet. On the worksheet, at first, it's going to be a true or false whether or not it can be solved using the quadratic equation. Now, if you encounter something like 4x plus 3, I know that it is a linear equation, but it can also be solved using the quadratic equation because you can put a as 0 and you can still solve it. Now, something weird will happen when you put a as 0. So let me show you one of the problems. Or not show you, but let's do one of the problems. Let's say 5x equals 0. Well, first of all, negative b, which is going to be -5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 25, minus 4 times 0, since a is 0, times c, and c is 0. So we just have 25. So 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 divided by 2a, which is 0. And when a is 0, the answer to the quadratic, if you solved it, will be infinite, because divide by 0 means error divide by 0. You can't divide by 0. So if you're trying to solve a linear equation with the quadratic equation, it'll always be infinity, is what I put as my answer. Even though it's linear, on the true or false, if it asks you if it can be solved using the quadratic formula, it can be solved using the quadratic formula. But the answer will be infinity. Even though we all know that the correct answer is 0, the answer which I want you to put is infinity. So, I've given you all the tools. Sometimes it'll only say to solve for the plus sign, which means instead of, now let's say that we had something where like it was clean. It was like 2 plus or minus, my screen is messy. 2 plus or minus 2 divided by 2. That's a lot of 2's. The way we're going to solve this is first we're going to do 2 plus 2 divided by 2, and then we're going to do 2 minus 2 divided by 2. What plus or minus means that we have to do both of them. So this is 1 and this is the other. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 2 and 2 minus 2 is 0, and 0 divided by 2 is 0. So quadratic is always going to have 0. Except for our next lesson, it's always going to have 2 solutions. In our next lesson, we'll learn whether it has 1 solution or 2 solutions. Whoa, my screen just got weird. So in the next lesson called discriminants, we'll learn whether or not it has 1, 2, or 0 solutions. Sometimes it can have 0 solutions, sometimes it can have 1 solution, and sometimes it can have 2 solutions. You never know. So, that's it for today's video. I'll have the link for the worksheet in the description. Please try to do that worksheet. It will help build your foundation on the quadratic formula. I hope you guys learned something. Do the worksheet, which is linked down below. Check out my website, which is also down below. And I'll see you guys on Sunday with the answer key. Bye.